That's like someone asking me like, why did you make your website on your computer? And I'm like, what? Like, how are you doing it? Like,
this podcast is brought to you by Hey Taco, the only peer-to-peer recognition platform that uses tacos to help teams around the world share gratitude. I'm Doug.
I'm Una.
This is our podcast, Amazing Teams. Sondre Rasch, welcome to the Amazing Teams podcast.
Great to be here, Doug.
Sondre, it's nice to meet you. Nice to have you here. And for our listeners, would you mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself and SafetyWing?
Sure, yeah. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of SafetyWing. We are ultimately building a global social safety net and a country on the internet. So far, we've gotten to the health part of the global social safety net, where we have nomad insurance for digital nomads, and health insurance for nomads and for remote teams worldwide. And from Norway, previously started another company called SuperSide, a freelancer platform. And that's it.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm familiar with SuperSide as a designer. Of course, when companies like that pop up, you pay attention. I was recently watching your talk at the Network State Conference, and
nice.
you mentioned you predicted that in the future people will view countries more like products, and I thought that was just such a radical thought. Right? Can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about that concept? Treating countries like a product?
Right. Yeah, this is a bit of a preposterous thought from the look of today, because we associate countries with force. I think ultimately, I mean, I'm not like an anarchist in that way. I'm not saying that doesn't have its role to play, but that is the association and why it seems so preposterous, because products, like I buy a Diet Coke or an iPhone, like it's completely optional. And also like how they appear to us is very different. But that I think is the fundamental one. And I think that partly had to do with the environment that we lived through over the last 100 years. There's been this like immense centralization. And part of it was because the weapons kind of got really good. So if you go back to like the 1800s, there's less centralization, because like a farmer with a gun, like that was like where America grew up in some sense, like the Wild West, and it's as kind of powerful as like a soldier with a gun. But that's no longer true when the soldier would have like a nuke, right? So this is like the logic of violence described in the book Sovereign Individual, and that has a little bit flipped with the internet, where it's now easier to defend due to encryption and stuff like that. And also the increased mobility that has emerged over the last 50 years is changing that. And lastly, the big one is the internet, causing the sort of economic structure to completely change. People work, sell their products online. And so I think that social structures follow like reality. Like if you lived on the moon, you would buy air in a bottle, probably. And so similarly, we have already moved to the internet, and I think social structures will appear here. However, they won't have the same element of force. So there won't be a monopoly on internet countries. There won't be, and also the other countries will experience kind of increased competition as people will be more mobile. Like we see it with people I've worked with over my career, where moving, even dramatically, seems more like being a digital nomad in a refugee if you have your income online and your network online. I remember in previous company, I worked with a designer from Venezuela, and this is like 8 years ago. I didn't notice anything. And then at one point she told me that a couple of months ago, she had actually like on Friday left Venezuela and then arrived in Colombia on Monday, and was just like back to work. So nobody even noticed. Right. And her entire social network still available, right, on Signal, WhatsApp, whatever. And her income was there. And, she was a refugee, but it's just such a dramatically different experience than it would have been had she not had like an online income. And when things are optional, then a different pressure shows up, which is that you have to kind of serve your users a little bit more, because if not, they're just going to buy the alternative. And that incentive, I think, is a big shaper of countries. Countries can be good, but they're like good out of benevolence, not because they have to, kind of, at least in the short term. And so, but a product ends up being forced to be good. And therefore, they will end up looking more like products, the countries of the future.
When you when you left SuperSide and you started SafetyWing, I'm curious, did it feel like your social network was there? Obviously, your income wasn't there, right? You had to like finish one thing. How was the move from company to company? How would you describe that in terms of the
Yeah, it
consistency?
is very dramatic because I am a very all-in kind of person. And so you sort of wind up like my whole person and identity and knowledge and what I'm interested in whatever my project is. So in that sense, it's just such a big departure. But that said, though, like I'm still, you know, great friends following the company, shareholder, like some still watching it. It's still run by my co-founder, Frederick. I'm paying attention and they're doing a great job. And they're actually one of SafetyWing's biggest partners, customers. We did start out in a way, the idea came there, right? We had freelancers on the platform, didn't have benefits. We went to create that in SafetyWing. But the transition is big. And yeah, there is like a year of like desert there in the middle. Although I also find that a very kind of romantic time. There's like a very early stage of a company when it's just dreams and like nothing tangible, and it's probably gonna die. Like it is very
Doug,
sweet.
did you feel like it was a romantic time when you left your company and started Hey Taco in that first year?
There's no feeling like when you're first getting started, as Sondre probably knows from starting several companies. That first year is just, it's an amazing little journey right there in itself.
Sondre, were you interested in remote work and then you started SafetyWing? Or did you start SafetyWing and then you got interested in remote work because that was the problem you were solving, the safety net for remote workers?
Yeah, no,
What
I was
was it?
definitely interested. I mean, SuperSide is also fully remote,
Mhm.
and I knew about online freelancing before that. And it's weird, but like even though that's 2014, it wasn't like I even took an active decision to make the company remote. That was like a given. That's like someone asking me like, why did you make your website on your computer? And I'm like, what? Like, how are you doing it? Like, it's completely took it for granted. Why did I do that? Had probably a lot to do with the fact that way earlier, when I was growing up, early 2000s, I had a website. I worked, I like knew about this communities, IRC, did some programming and stuff, and that was like the world I knew. So I don't know the regular office, that way of building a company. I'm sure it works for them. I mean, I've seen it in movies. I've seen Office Space. So it's like I am aware that that's a way. But to me, it seems completely not an option. Partly because I wanted to be a digital nomad, so that wouldn't work out.
That's interesting. So you started SuperSide. It was a remote company. You started SafetyWing, remote company. You seem to know a thing or two about building remote companies. What trends are you currently seeing among remote workers that you think more companies should pay attention to?
There is a maturation going on
Mm-hmm.
with the remote companies. So if you go back a few years, it was absolutely ridiculous. And I heard, you experienced the same, right? Like 2020, when all these non-remote companies were forced to go remote, and they were like total noobs. Like, and they were so like completely out of their zone, and they were asking the most basic questions.
Mm-hmm.
There was a post kind of lockdown return where it sort of, but it didn't fall even as far as I thought it would. So like remote work as a share of the economy, like it stabilized almost 5x where it was pre-COVID. It just might be like the major thing that COVID changed. E-commerce fell down to trend. And so a lot of these companies had to figure it out. And there's been a period of maturation. as many companies that make stuff for remote companies have figured stuff out. So I would say in things like payroll and benefits. So payroll and benefits right after COVID, and of course this is where I am, but I can at least say that, and I'm sure it's true in other domains as well, right? That's like 100% startups, early stage startups, in 2020, 2021, which means that a lot of their products weren't fully developed, but now they are getting developed. And so that's, it's normalizing, and that's probably very good for the people working in these companies. Things are being figured out one by one. A lot of the sort of fluster where people are like, hey, wait, is this the case? And then they're like, wait, no, it's not. Some companies spent 2 years looking into that. And so that's an observation. It's not a trend. A new trend. I mean, one trend that I keep mentioning that is actually kind of old now, but it's still, I think it's so large. And you see this at the Network State Conference. That is remote work, redistributing kind of population and creating new opportunities there for things like new sort of real estate stuff and towns and cities. And that's gaining steam. I've been watching it for years. I'm thrilled about this. I'm thrilled that I hope we will be seeing like the founding of new cities again. I love to see what kind of cities, will be made now. And the people kind of rebuilding a lot of old buildings, like resorts into remote work towns and stuff like that. I absolutely love that. And that's definitely something that is a trend.
That would be fun to see. Where do people choose to build cities now that they don't have to be situated on rivers or close to oceans or next to shipping ports, right? It's like maybe it's on the top of a mountain where I kind of want to be actually remote fully, right?
Exactly. And how would the city itself look like within?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's also made up for like being as many people as possible, close as possible to their workplace and kind of getting there in the morning.
Yeah.
So lift that constraint. What does the city look like? Different, I think. And I suspect much better, because that's a hard constraint.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the hybrid work models? Do you see that sustainable for long term, or is the future more, is it going to look more remote?
It depends how it's defined, and there's some degree of this of that is it's everyone agrees once you sort out the definitions. But SafetyWing, you could say we're hybrid because we have team gatherings, for example, which we do. So we have an in-person element. We also have like ad hoc team gatherings. So it's like there's a budget, like any team can be like, request this quarter, we want to fly in somewhere and meet up and work on a sprint. So that's also in person. We are fully remote. We are from all over the world, however. So, but if you mean hybrid, like 3 days a week from the office, 2 days, that I think is more like an adaptation to that people kind of discovered during the kind of forced remote work period, which is that, yeah, you can do focused, at least once you get past the transformation. In the beginning, it was, hard for people to figure out how to work. But once you get past the transformation, yeah, you can do focused work from home. You can, do meeting work at the job. And so I think that has a place to play. I do think that over time, remote work will outcompete more and more. Like, so that steady curve is still crawling up, from 2000 to 2020, and also post 2021 is going up. And I think a big reason why it's going up is because of the sort of talent effect. That's the sort of economic effect that overshadows all the other ones. Like if you start a company in a town with 1,000 people, like imagine who you could hire. Like it's just, there's not going to be that, right? Like there's one designer in the town. Is there one programmer? Like if you're lucky, certainly not going to be the best in the world, or very unlikely. So, and then go from there to New York City, a much bigger talent pool. Well, there is as big scale difference to go from New York City to the internet workforce, which is massive. It's absolutely enormous. So that's an economic benefit. It means that very likely for the people that do work remote, they will end up having better talent over time.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that this can't be like, there will be exceptions. There's a variety of companies, there's great people obviously in bigger cities. So it's not like this is like a either or thing, but it's just that a driver over time. It's a competitive advantage. That means that on average, more and more remote companies will do better and better and better over time. And eventually it will be, I would suspect that we end up in a scenario where everything that can be remote will be remote for this reason.
Tell us, Sondre, about your remote team. So I think we read it was like 150 people, 60 countries. Do I have those numbers approximately right?
That's right.
Okay. That's a lot of time zones, I'm assuming. 60 countries, right? So how have you built this remote team to a point where obviously it's a large team, you're doing well, I'm assuming you all like each other, and of course there's ups and downs, but like probably a really solid team. What have you learned? Like, this is what, your fourth company? What
Right.
have you learned? How have you built the team?
Yeah. I mean, it's second real company. The two former was more
Define
like
real.
projects.
Define real. We're not getting into the details,
Well, okay. It's the second company where we were like having full-time employees. And SuperSide has now, what is it? I think it's 700 people, but it was only a couple hundred when I left. So what did I learn building SafetyWing? Well, yeah, I do like my team. In fact, they're amazing. And not just that, but like, I would say close to every single person is amazing. And it's not hyperbole. Like it's accurate. If you like that kind of person, like, you're not going to believe it. You're like, what is this crazy experiment? And what kind of person is that? Well, if you meet them, it's like, they're all like extremely authentic and kind and very, very smart and competent, kind of like, which is like, but in a way that or they're also interesting. And so they're remarkably nice to work with, and it's absolutely lovely, actually. So yeah, how did we build it? What did I learn doing that?
Yeah, like,
Well, I mean, since I built a company before, I learned some stuff. I fortunately took it far enough to learn how bad I was. Like, I kind of like was able to make a lot of mistakes that I didn't have to repeat. Some of that was on sort of values and stuff. I had erroneously coded that as corporate BS, which it definitely can be. Maybe even most of the case is, actually, because it's fake. Like, they're insincere. It's not, but it can also be like the DNA of the organization. And because I had done that lesson, we kind of wrote that down, and we made this culture that then became, where that was like what the whole, like, in how we selected people and everything in the company, and we were able to live true to that values. And then we get a company that was very much one thing in the end, and that, I think, was extremely good, and something that we've been able to hold on to as well. So we are weird in a good way, like, meaning not average in many of these cultural things, and being able to hold on to them, and that creates a very good culture, which is also what people in the company are saying. It's because it's good and it's consistent. So, for example, we have flat-based salaries. Everyone who's full-time has the same salary. We have this whole birds thing you're seeing with that's also both customer-facing and inward. Like, everyone gets in and it's like, this artist draws them as a bird, and that's now their avatar. And we have a ton of like stuff like that, and it makes a lot of sense on the inside. So that's one part that we've done a lot.
did you do that from the start, or did this come to be at some point in your
Yeah, really early. I
journey?
mean, values and stuff we wrote down, like, the founders just sat down and just wrote it down early, like, before we had made any product, because yeah, I knew it was worth doing.
What made you come around? You thought it was corporate BS, and now you're starting this company, and now you're like, you probably didn't wake up one morning saying, you know what, I think this is actually good, let me do it.
Yeah,
What was
actually,
the,
I learned it negatively. So if I were to say it, it's like this: like, if you don't have an explicitly defined culture, it is up for grabs. Actually, it is up for grabs, and the way that tends to materialize is through something like office politics. it's essentially like a vacuum that wants to be filled. So it's like eventually someone comes and they actually like, we would like the culture to be this thing. And this is often because it's negative and adversarial, like office politics tend to be, right? Where people internally are not united to the common goal of the company. Tends to be a bit negative. So yeah, it was just like an observation. Oh, this happened to some degree because we didn't have the counter.
The absence caused it, in a sense.
Yeah.
What about the flat salaries? Can you share more about that?
Yeah, this is not something we are I would necessarily recommend or anything. It was a bit random that we did it, but it's such a good example because it is weird. That's why I'm kind of taking it out. But yeah, we just in the beginning thought it's literally day one. I think it's the same day we're writing our vision and values. We also brought up this salary, and like we said, and then the salary increases at these like revenue markers, and we just like wrote up like a long list, and then we've just kept it. I mean, it does have some real benefits, and the largest benefit by far is how little talk there is about salary in the company. Almost never. I can seriously remember it. While in the previous company where this is then fully negotiated individual, with bands and whatever, the best practices are, which means that's more of like a conformity fealty than, but whatever the best practices are is it's, you end up talking more about it because there's more to talk about, right? It's like, is this exactly fair, right? Given the system. With our system, it's probably not fair in some sense, but at least you know what the system, you haven't been screwed over, right? Like you can at least say, and you knew this before you joined. So it's like, it's you at least know that compared to the other people in the team, you have been treated the same. You know that for sure.
And then you don't have to worry about it, right? Versus if you're worried about, is this person doing the same job as me and getting paid a lot more? Now you're right. Worried. And that's when the office politics start too, because you're talking to your colleague and whatever. It just spirals down.
It does have significant discounts, by the way. Just to say those, right? There are some very fair reasons to pay people differently. Okay. So, and we don't. And that means that, like seniority, we take that off the table. But it's fine. It works. Some people who have, amazing salaries. And that is a high salary, right? I mean, it's like we can hire people from the Bay Area.
It feels like a lot of times it's just about expectations, setting the clear expectations at the beginning, and then people know what they're signing up for, right? So if you're going to be a remote company from the beginning, people know that that's what they're joining, right? Or if you're going to be an in-person company from the beginning, that's what people know what they're joining. I feel like it's the changing up and down and not being clear with expectations that causes all this turmoil. I wonder if that's what's happening with the expectations of Amazon employees. Right now, Amazon said, hey, we're going to go back to 5 days a week. And if I joined 6 months ago, I probably didn't anticipate that. I thought it was going to be 3 days a week or whatever. But now I'm mad.
It's so pathetic, the whole thing.
Tell us more about it. I'm curious. What's your as a remote work expert?
Yeah, as a remote work expert, and my wife works at Amazon.
There we go.
Here's the story, which is completely available to anyone, but for some reason this is picked up whenever the journalists are covering Amazon's latest return to work mandate. But they have gone through 5 worldwide news return to work mandates since 2020. Since actually end of 2020 was the first one. So why do they keep doing it again? Because they are failing at it every time. And it works out like this. It's like they announce it because they had a seminar, and then it trickles out in the organization, like there's a big public uproar. But what's happening in the individual teams is the following. Well, obviously, like at least half of the employees in any team doesn't live like where the HQ or whatever is, right? So it's like, well, for them, it's either move or quit. And so you get this thing where, they start to make exceptions for top performers or key employees, because, it's ridiculous to fire your top performing programmer or salesperson, right? You're just not going to do that, basically, like no matter what. So if your top performers end up saying, well, then I'm going to quit, well, then you make an exception. And so they make exception. And then the dust starts to settle. and then they're still equally remote. And then they do it again, like 6 to 12 months later. And they've done that 5 times. And this is the 6th. It's childish. I can't believe how stupid it is. And I can't believe like how, like, it's kind of like, I don't know what air it is, but like this is like a big successful company, and they have like presumably competent managers. I have no idea why they're not learning the lesson between each time. Like, I'm just watching from an observer, but I am flabbergasted at how incompetent it is, and that they're doing it again. And I'm willing to bet that they're going to do the same, go through the same. So we'll have a chat again about Amazon's 7th return to work mandate. Absolutely, it's a joke.
Doug, I feel like you had a question on your mind about this.
No, I'm just, yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's kind of crazy that you're just thinking about somebody that is a newer employee, and then all of a sudden your job changes. I couldn't imagine what that would be like.
Question for both of you. Do you think they should just not have a return to office mandate? People can work remotely whenever they want? Or do you think they should have a mandate, but at least implement it well and make the change management better? What do you guys think?
I mean, obviously it doesn't look good when they keep on doing it, because to Sondre's point, it looks like they're failing at it. Yeah.
I do think it is important to make a decision and take the cost. I don't think the right decision is for them to return to work. So at this point, everyone who's remote in Amazon is a key employer or top performer, right? So imagine that you had the choice, like you can return to the office, just their position, right? Why they end up, but you have to fire your top half of your company. Would you do it? No, that's not a good idea. That's actually a very bad idea. If you were to do that, right, that I would enter that with like, with a lot, with that expectation, like that's the crisis we're going to in. We're going to fire our top half of our company, and we're somehow going to then hire us back up to becoming like having a great team. And that's the kind of like choice they have to make. But that's really hard to do when you're like 1 million people. Recall, like they're not a small team. There are 1 million people, and it's not like, no organization of 1 million is perfectly centralized, right? There's all these teams out there, and they have their own responsibilities and projects, and maybe they can't, right? Maybe it's like somehow operationally necessary. What I would rather do if I were them is, okay, if I was literally them, I would obviously just embrace the remote work thing and try to become great at it. But let's say that I am a person who doesn't like that and really, 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 really enjoys the in-office, at least for myself. And I would probably, maybe I would do like a split up teams that was Stripe did. So you would have like remote. I would definitely keep some hybrid, even on all teams. I don't know why they're departing from that, but on all the remote exceptions, I would probably try to gather them in teams. So you have remote teams and you have non-remote teams, because they should be managed differently. And that's a problem you see with hybrid meaning some remote and some not. That tends to be a problem, because you do have to manage them differently. You'd have to approach it differently. So I would establish like, this is a remote developer team, like almost like a division, remote areas, and make the in-office one separate.
Joining a remote meeting when you're not in person and everyone else is, it's such a different experience. Or being in person when half of the team is remote, so hard. I feel like you're right. All or nothing is often a lot easier.
Can we play a little game? Sondre, you up for a little game?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. I've got 5 things I've written down here, and I'm going to read them off, and you just either say love it or leave it.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. First one, unlimited PTO.
Love it.
Performance reviews.
Love it.
That's fine. 4-hour workday.
Leave it.
Using gamification to drive productivity.
Love it.
Paying employees in cryptocurrency.
Is it optional or obligatory?
Optional.
Love it. Can I explain anymore? It's so painful to say without clarification, some of these.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
performance review, you got hung up on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I mean, really, all of them. Unlimited PTO, we have in SafetyWing unlimited, but we have minimum, which is the kind of solution to that, race to the bottom.
What's the
Yeah.
minimum?
It's the same we have in Norway. I think it's 5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have, and then the other one was, performance reviews. We have them. We got them in real late. I have very mixed feelings about it. But there is an upside to it. There is an upside to having a standard to a role. Like, there is an upside to feedback. And then it's just that it can go wrong. It can be like very bureaucratic and a lot of stuff to fill out often. You can create this culture where where you sort of incentivizes getting like managers to like you. And there are some other things instead of like focusing on goals, which is like a different thing actually. So there are some problems I have with it. We have it and we try to minimize those downsides, but yeah, that's my hesitation on it. I'm not sure. I was like, can I say that I love performance reviews? It was very difficult for me.
It was the wrong word to use with it, sounds like.
Well,
Tolerated might have
right.
been better.
Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate I appreciate you playing along. They were designed to be more thought provoking. There was no wrong or right answers.
it was fun. It was fun.
So
What was 3, 4, and 5 again?
using gamification to
Yeah,
drive productivity and then paying people in crypto.
maybe a crypto optional. That's a no-brainer. But yeah, using gamification. This one we do. We don't do it in this kind of instrumental way, but like making this like this is something I actually learned from games when I was growing up. Was that I observed that those people in games, like the alliances and stuff in games, were so good at the storytelling. Like they just like infused an organization with like a story that was just really inspiring, and the artwork. They just invested so much in the artwork. And so this is something we brought to SafetyWing. And like we literally the first 3 months of the company, we were like drawing birds, and we've implemented a lot of these kind of fun institutions, and some of them do drive productivity. So one of them is just Build Week. It's just a quarterly thing where people can go on any team. So it's like basically and there's no meeting. So it's like everything normal is dissolved, and you're supposed to build something for 1 week, and you only do that with a small team. And anyone can take initiative for something they want to build. And this thing is so productive, it's ridiculous. And like afterwards, like people get like kind of like some swag for their like bird avatar that they can wear for a little bit, like a hat or glasses or something if they won Build Week. And like people present as like a demo day the following week. But that's an example of a kind of gamified thing, but it doesn't feel like the company is messing with you or anything. Like it kind of actually feels the opposite. It's like, yes, no meetings week.
And this
But
is once a quarter that you do that?
yeah. Once a quarter.
Nice.
We've tried also every other month. Every month was started become a bit too often. It actually it feels a bit hectic. Like it is very disruptive. So just stop everything else.
That's awesome.
There was a third one, Doug, what was the third one?
The 4-hour workday.
4-hour workday.
4-hour workday. So here I also had a hesitation, and the hesitation is I'm not against 4-hour workday if you can get your responsibility fulfilled in 4 hours. But if it's 4-hour workday as a goal or a cap, then I'm very much against it. Some days there's a crisis, you got to work a long day, and so yeah. But we don't
Sounds
have
like-
working hours in SafetyWing, so in theory, someone could do a 4-hour workday if that's what they need.
Sounds like you're very result driven. Get your work done, get the goals done. Whether you get it done in 4 hours or 40 hours, doesn't matter.
Correct. Yeah, that's what we do.
That's great. Let's talk about gratitude.
Yeah.
With our company, Hey Taco, we leverage gamification, and our purpose is to help people build a habit of gratitude. And with Hey Taco, everyone has 5 tacos that they can give out each day to recognize someone for something they've done, or to just simply show their appreciation for someone. So if you have 5 tacos, Sondre, who would you give your 5 tacos to today and why?
Yeah. So I would give one to Jared, our COO and former head of product, and he's been with the company since the very beginning. And I'm just really grateful that he joined when he did and that he stayed the whole journey, because he is so unusual for joining an early stage startup. Like, he's like a very sort of conscientious, super organized, but he can appreciate the other side, kind of
The
like
hectic side.
so the less, let's say, organized but sometimes more creative side. And I think that's such a great thing. So it's just been incredibly complimentary. Maybe now less so than before, but like for a long time, and also been growing with the company and having a personal growth trajectory and being as dedicated and motivated day one as now. So very grateful for that. Gilda is kind of like the leader of the designers and design operations, I guess it's called, but she's a designer as well. And she made this thing called the flight guide, which is just kind of like describing how we do our design stuff. And it is the most beautiful internal manual you've seen in your entire life. It is astonishing. And the particularly thing I loved about it is that, so she is like very kind of excellent, like everything she does kind of like very high quality, but she was able to do that without like losing the kind of like soul of any of the stuff we were doing, which was strange and unique, but instead actually making it more itself, which was very hard to do, and previous attempts not even been close. So that like combo of being able to recognize what's unique or soulful about something while also being excellent, I thought that was just, and that's going to really cement that, I think, for the duration of this company. So therefore, I'm very grateful for that. Tiago, our CFO, he has a very unique trait that I don't know. I haven't met anyone else who does this, and I wish they would do. Like, if I've worked with a lot of finance types in my life, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but he does something that I think a lot more of them could do, which is, how do you think methodically about the future or potential? And that is actually quite hard. So a lot of people will come in and they will be able to say, show me the numbers so far, and I will extrapolate them and add them up and, slice them up in various ways. It's another to be like, let me tell you about some qualitative idea that is in the future, that is a potential that might happen, maybe not. And then to listen to that and then be able to make a model which actually makes sense and you can learn from. When there is no history, extremely rare. I've never seen it. So very grateful for that, Tiago. And Brennan and Dino, I'm going to say that together because I'm talking a bit longer, but Brennan and Dino, they are two of the like child prodigies that we are in SafetyWing. And they're just so great. So I think we both hired them when they were very young. Like, I think they were like 18 and 17 or something. Brennan is our extremely good product manager, and Dino is like a star developer. And they're older now. I think Dino's been here like 5-6 years, but yeah, it is. They're now building our new product where we're getting a lot closer to our vision, which I'm extremely excited about. And yeah, I just really appreciate both of them, their kind of like approach to building stuff. Like, they really are not easily corrupted. So it's like there's this kind of like enthusiasm and sort of simplicity, not getting caught up in bullshit. Extremely good at that. And then it's like this like almost like challenge like approach to it, like how fast can we build this? And then there's no vanity. Like, there's no moment where they're thrilled about knowing like a word other people don't understand, for example, which also can get people caught up sometimes. And the net result is this like very enthusiastic, humble, and like speed. So I think it's incredibly inspiring to see. I'm very grateful for it because we're making products so fast now. I can barely keep up.
Wow.
Those were some meaty tacos.
Yeah, that was, I think, the most thoughtful tacos anyone has given on the Amazing Teams podcast. So kudos to you, Sondre. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you joining us, sharing your insights, your experience. It's been really awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sondre. Thanks for being willing to play a game. Gamification in practice. We talked about it, love it. So we practice what we preach. Thanks, Sondre.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. One of the important things about building a team is gratitude. If you're looking to add more gratitude into your team, check out heytaco.com. We are clearly biased, but it really does work. Use the code AMAZINGTEAMS to receive 15% off for the first 3 months of your subscription.